So let's get into a little bit of history of Mary Shelley, the author of this book, Frankenstein. Mary Shelley, we believe, was born in Scotland. She's a British author, if you will, born in Scotland. She comes from a very famous family that is associated with philosophy, even women's rights, in an early time in British history. She's from the northern part of the UK, so she's from up here in Scotland. And the historical setting for her novel, as we've been discussing, is the time period of the scientific revolution, the time period of the industrial revolution that follows the scientific revolution, and a time period when people are moving in extraordinary numbers from the countryside to the city. And I believe we noted in the earlier video that cities are having a hard time keeping up with this. So it's also the time period of the development of the university, science becoming a discipline at universities, and so a lot of the settings for this novel are associated with that kind of idea, right? That we're at university where lots of knowledge is coming on, and there's some controversy about how to pursue science as well. So very interesting. And again, she is living and working in the UK in particular, so the setting is also England. I have some images here because one of the things that's interesting in Mary Shelley's novel is you'll see a lot of references to nature. It seems to me when Victor Frankenstein, her protagonist, goes back home, away from the university, when he goes back home, out into the countryside, things seem to get a lot nicer and a lot better for him. A sense of his sanity returns. When he goes to the university, when he goes to where he's surrounded by all this knowledge and all these possibilities in a big city, it seems that he gets a little manic, that he gets a little agitated. So one of the things that occurs to me when you're reading this is that, again, these beautiful images of the places that Mary Shelley grew up, these beautiful countryside images, seem to be indicative of what country life would be like living along the river. And when Victor goes to the city, when he goes to the university, things seem to get dark. They seem to get sort of chaotic. So again, beautiful scenes from out in the countryside. That's one of the features of a romantic novel as well, is this appreciation for nature. And again, reminding you that in the scientific revolution, in the industrial era, we seem to be really thinking about the role of nature in society, and particularly in science. Mary Shelley gets her name Shelley because she's married to a poet, Percy Shelley, and he seems to have been a very big influence in her life as well. So, we believe that her parents weren't too crazy about this idea of her marrying a poet, even though they themselves were philosophers and writers. It seems that they were hoping that their daughter would get a much more secure kind of marriage than marrying a poet. So she seems to have eloped, seems to have married. Eventually they accepted, but she seems to have eloped and married this very famous poet who takes her on interesting travels and helps her to follow a very interesting life. In particular, they go to Geneva, Switzerland, as you probably know from the introduction to Mary Shelley's work. And they go to Geneva, beautiful city, as you can see, beautiful mountains. And they seem to be sort of holed up on a lake. Maybe you can see some lakes back here. Yeah, holed up on a lake at a villa when it turns out to be a dark and stormy night. And the folks there, they have a rather large party of intellectuals, writers, and they decide to have a challenge as to who can tell the best ghost story. And that seems to be the inspiration for this great story that Shelley puts together. These are some modern images of Geneva. Very popular destination even today. I put this map in just to also show you that one of the main features of the very early parts of the work, right, of the very interesting early parts, are this kind of unusual presentation of these letters. And we understand, here is Petrozado, St. Petersburg, we understand, oh, here we go, we understand that our character, Walton, starts off in St. Petersburg, and what he wants to do is get a boat and start to head north, either through this way, perhaps as Shelley imagined it, or up through here. And the idea is that we want to go north into the Arctic Ocean. We want to find a magnetic north, but also perhaps the Northwest Passage that would allow travelers, here's the UK here, here's Scotland, that would allow travelers to go across the North Pole to get to China, to get to Japan. Instead of having to go from England, as you might imagine, if you want to get to Asia down here, typically you had to sail all the way around England, all the way around Africa, outside of the scope here, all the way around to India in order to get to Asia here. If you could go across the North Pole, perhaps you could get there much faster. So that's where we open up. That's where our character Walton is. As he's booking passage, he's trying to get a research ship, if you will. They're going to come out of St. Petersburg. They're going to go north. And that's where our story starts to begin. Right? So speaking of which, I thought what we do is just outline a little bit of what happens in the beginning. The book opens with a preface in which Shelley discusses some of her influences and her inspirations, we've already said. It's followed by this series of letters written by an explorer to his sister. Now, this fellow is fictional, right? But the premise is not. There were lots of folks hoping to try to do exactly what her character Walton is doing. This explorer is attempting, as we said, to discover the Northwest Passage and to discover why it is that compasses point north, right? What's the magnetism there? Both magnetism and electricity are big issues for exploration among scientists in Mary Shelley's day. As you probably know, Walton's ship gets stuck in the ice. And he's going to have to wait until they can break free from the ice. He's going to have to wait until a little bit of a thaw happens. So he's stuck, and he's still writing letters to his sister. The assumption is that sometime along the way he's going to have some way to mail them, right? But it's a device that Shelley uses to help us move along the plot. Strange visitors pass by, right? He and his crew are out there working on their ship, trying to break it free, and they see a sled being pulled by a dog, some kind of dog sled, or maybe more than one dog sled, and it's being driven by this huge figure. Is it a man? Is it a creature? We don't know. And it goes past the ship and just keeps on going north. Strange visitors pass. One stops. Another strange visitor comes by, and he is half dead. This fellow stops. Walton restores his health, and the visitor, this is Victor Frankenstein, begins to tell his story. We learn of the tragedy in young Victor's life as his mother dies. Victor will attend a university, and when he goes to university, he's going to study science. But how will he approach it? Will he approach it in the old way? This is the old alchemy way. This is the source of that term, the Philosopher's Stone. Yes, this is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, right? So will he approach it through alchemy, which is sort of magical, or will he approach science through the new chemistry? What's the difference? And so that becomes a discussion that Victor starts to outline for Walton. He said, I started off, I had tragedy in my young life. I went off to school trying to figure out what science holds for me and began to study science. I have a couple of quotes from you. This is Volume 1, Chapter 2. He says, the ancient teachers of this science, chemistry, promised impossibilities and performed nothing. The modern masters promise very little. They know that metals cannot be transmuted, and they know that the elixir of life is a chimera. So you can't change. The new chemists say you can't really change metals, but the old guys say you can change metals, change lead into gold. The new guys say there is no elixir of life. There is no fountain of youth. The old guys say there was. But these philosophers, whose hands seem only made to dabble in dirt and their eyes to pore over microscopes or the crucible, have indeed performed miracles. They penetrate into the recesses of nature and show how she works in her hiding places. They ascend into the heavens. They have discovered how the blood circulates and the nature of the air we breathe. They have acquired new and almost unlimited powers. They can command the thunders of heaven, mimic the earthquake, and even mock the invisible world with its own shadows. So Shelley here in these quotes is telling us what amazing people these scientists are. They're amazing. They have almost unlimited powers. They can command the thunders of heaven, mimic the earthquakes. So keep reading. Victor tells Walton the whole story. His pursuit of science for science's sake. There will be ethical concerns raised. There's this creation scene. How does Shelley say that the creature was created? We assume some electricity is involved, right? So keep reading, keep going.